thank you very much, Jose, for your presentation. I will continue right now with my guest today. Is going to be Daniel Schwartzkopff. Welcome, Daniel. Thank you for being with us today. We're going to talk about really interesting.
Hi.
Hi, how you doing?
Doing well, thanks to yourself. Thanks for having me here.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate. I will start this interview by asking you if you can tell us a little bit about yourself, about what you do. I know that you are the CEO of Invictus Capital. Tell us about it. Thank you.
Great. So Invictus Capital, we provide tokenized alternative investments in a variety of asset classes. So our first fund was the Crypto 20 fund, which we launched in 2017. And we've since expanded to a variety of other asset classes, including tokenized gold, venture capital, and others. So we have a single platform where you can sign up and you can invest across all of these different kinds of assets in a single place, tokenized with liquidity 24/7. So it's not like a traditional, investment manager where it takes you 2 weeks to sign up and you have to sign paper forms and scan them and all that kind of stuff. You can do it at 2 a.m. on a Sunday if that's what you want to do, and you can cash out, and at the same time, it's you don't have to wait the traditional 5 days or T+2 or whatever the traditional asset managers are doing. So it's faster, more efficient, and more cost effective to do it in a tokenized manner. So that allows us to deliver investment opportunities to people all around the world with no minimum. So it's not something where you need to put in $50,000 or $10,000. We've had investors from some countries put in $1 or $2. So we're opening this kind of investment up, and because it's tokenized, you can break them into tiny fractions of a unit, and there's no additional work for us because everything's automated. So we can effectively, cost effectively offer these opportunities to people.
That's amazing. That's really good. I love the approach of tokenization. I've been talking about it in my own channel too. I think it's amazing the good things that we can achieve by tokenizing some of the investments, not only because we can have funds, but we can also have business with tokens, or we can even invest in many other ways with tokens. So tokens are revolutionary, and I think it's amazing that we can approach that in the investment. Very good. I will ask you now. I've been reading about like all what Invictus Capital is doing, and I think it's amazing. By the way, one of the things that I will ask you right now is, what about democratization of financial opportunities? You guys talk about it in one of your articles, and I will love to get a little bit more insights about what that means, why you guys are approaching on that.
Great. So essentially what we're looking to do through all of our investment vehicles is offer traditionally in first world economies where we're offering people excellent access to alternative investment, and in emerging markets we're offering people access to investments in general. There are a lot of countries, and I'm from South Africa. I know what it's like to be exposed to a very limited set of investment opportunities. Some, for example, are all denominated, because of the very strict capital controls, are all denominated in our local currency, the South African rand. So that's a problem for a lot of people because of the high inflation. A lot of people don't want to invest in the local currency. So for an example, over the last 5 years, if you invested in one of our index funds on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, it would have returned about 17%, I think. And that was before the recent crash over 5 years. And before the crash, our currency had devalued around 30% against the US dollar over 5 years. Now it's 60%, and the dollar returns on the stocks are negative. So it really isn't difficult to see why a lot of people would want to save in dollar-backed investment funds. So all of the funds that we offer are dollar-denominated funds, and this makes it easy and palatable for people to save. So when we're offering one of these funds to somebody in, say, South Sudan or Ivory Coast, or a country that doesn't have very established asset management infrastructure, It allows people to invest easily in a way that, somebody is comfortable, in somewhere in the first world, like that has a very established fintech scene, like Germany, for example, or the UK or Canada.
Yep.
All of these countries have very established fintech communities, and even those countries still find it very attractive to, invest in some of our funds. So it is a world-class kind of opportunity available to everybody equally. And in these emerging markets economies, what we're offering is, the ability to invest at all versus just, the ability to get access to alternatives. And a lot of countries have very unfair laws where they legally exclude people. So the US, for example, legally excludes everybody that doesn't have $1 million in liquid assets or earns over $200,000 per annum. So that's, by a couple of the US census data surveys, 96% of the population is excluded from buying alternative assets. So you cannot invest in a hedge fund or any great opportunity. And the entire basis of that is just on how much capital you have. It doesn't matter if you have a PhD degree from Stanford in finance if you're 25 and you know everything about this, but you literally cannot take the best opportunities available when you're still young enough to take risks. You first need to get to $1 million, and that's how most people actually build up the capital. So so it locks people out of the cycle. It's pretty unfair.
Yeah, well, I want to ask you, because you guys are tokenizing right now the funds, right? You guys are creating your own blockchain, but for this, you guys have your own smart contract or your blockchain.
Yeah, so
you guys
we operate. We've got a set of unique smart contracts that operate on the Ethereum blockchain. So we didn't have to create kind of new infrastructure. It's a kind of tried and tested method that a lot of major cryptocurrencies have been using for a long time. It's fairly well, security tested by now. We obviously have all of our smart contracts, etc., audited, and we're glad to report that we've never had a security incident since launch in 2017. So we've managed to successfully, transfer tens of millions of dollars across all of these funds. And, this is verifiable on the blockchain. So you can see when somebody enters a fund, and you can see when somebody redeems from a fund, and you can see how much money is on the smart contract for people to redeem. So you always know that you're able to exit the fund when you want to.
Yeah, and you can get it. That's awesome. Now that you mention it, you're using Ethereum, and I'm a fan of Ethereum, by the way. And I just want to know a little bit more about your experience utilizing the blockchain of Ethereum. How has it been? Has it been easy for you guys to work with, and it's been reliable all this time?
Yeah, it's definitely been. I think in terms of all the platforms that are out there right now, it's still the most tested platform, the platform with the most developer resources available, and certainly the highest market capitalization, and in terms of liquidity for people to actually get in and out using Ethereum itself. But the great thing about using Ethereum now is that a lot of the stable coins have ERC20 versions. So people can invest into our funds using the smart contract, and they can use, for example, a smart, an ERC20 token of, say, Tether or True USD to invest into the fund directly using the smart contract. And they can also use a variety of the new tokens, gold-based tokens like PAXG and XAUT from Tether. So it's definitely the most support available on the Ethereum blockchain. It definitely makes our lives a fair bit easier because, for example, if people wanted to redeem in one of the other chains that don't have stable coins native, it would be quite difficult. But because we can store, say, USDT or TUSD on the smart contract, it makes it very easy for people to redeem in that currency. So it has made our lives a fair bit easier to choose Ethereum.
Yeah, that's amazing. And Coin Fury actually does the same. They have optional with some IRCs that are stable coins and makes it easy for people to trace on it. That's amazing. Let me ask you a little bit more about what are your thoughts about the federal Reserve in the United States and what they are doing right now with all these liquidity injections, and how you think this is going to affect emerging markets, and how we can prepare for these investments in the future.
So I think in terms of emerging markets, there are a lot of countries that have quite a bit of experience in what happens when you start printing money. So, one just on our doorstep here, we've got Zimbabwe and some other examples I can think of, Venezuela. Argentina has also had a pretty big problem recently. So I think the rest of the world knows what happens if you start printing money. There's going to be massive amounts of inflation. The value of the currency is going to decrease. Obviously, they're hoping by doing this that they can keep enough liquidity in the economy for everything to keep running. But the sad thing with the whole corona pandemic is that, unless we get to a vaccine rapidly, we're going to have to turn the economy on at some point. And pretty much all the major experts around globally agree that everybody is still going to get it at that point. We're delaying everybody getting it. So it's still going to happen. You can have an amazing lockdown. You can shut down the whole economy, lock everyone indoors for 6 weeks. And at the end of it, when people emerge, they're still all going to get infected because, you can't stop travel from the entire planet forever. You're going to have to open the economy at some point.
Anyway. Yep.
Yeah, it's not going to go away. So what we're doing right now is, globally, everybody's destroying the economy. And as unfortunate as it is, there will be the same negative consequences in terms of lives lost, people getting sick, etc. But we're just delaying it now. So instead of people, losing the same amount of lives and, having a running economy, we're going to have no economy and the same amount of people struggling. So I don't think it's a great outcome. In terms of the Fed printing money, I hope it, if you looked at the US markets, they had, the worst week since the recession, and then the best week, since the recession. So, with the same headline, the subtext on CNN was that, 11 million Americans have lost their jobs, but at the same time, it's the best week ever in the stock market since 2008. So everything is pretty wacky at the moment. Ultimately, we'll just see a lot of inflation.
Yeah, that resumes a lot. When you saw that picture of, like, I think it was Kramer in CNBC. I think I saw it, and was like the best week since 1931, and then was 16 million people unemployment. It's like, what is happening? Yeah, we are in those times, so we have to be prepared for everything. We are in a liquidity crisis right now, or we already passed the liquidity crisis and getting in a more of a, let's say, solvency crisis? Because I thought a little bit more about this, and I want probably you can explain us a little bit more on how investing in gold can be a solution.
Absolutely. So I think gold has historically performed really well during recessions and times of crisis. Say in 2001, with September 11th attacks on the US, there was a massive rally into gold as people thought, there were going to be much more severe consequences in terms of, a national war or something like that. So whenever there is a major international crisis, you can see the price of gold spike. And I don't think we're anywhere near the end of this crisis yet. So I think, in terms of upside for gold, I think there's definitely a lot of opportunity over the next couple of months as people come to the realization that, trillions of dollars, potentially unlimited quantitative easing has, been mandated to occur. So we're looking to this massive injection of cash into the economy. It's going to be difficult to say what's going to happen. Generally, an inflation hedge, something that performs well when traditional equities go down, is something that is a great portfolio diversifier. So it's definitely a good choice in terms of gold and the way it's performed historically. So that would definitely be something I would be looking at during this time. Is gold and precious metals. I mean, you can't really print more of them. There's a limited resource on this planet, so it's definitely a positive there. Much like Bitcoin, I guess.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you that. Are you yourself an investor of cryptocurrency? I mean, you own cryptocurrency?
Yeah,
right now?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. What are your thoughts about Bitcoin in the near
I'm
future? Let's,
the near future. The near future is always tough to predict, but although I think that definitely in terms of the current macroeconomic situation, it definitely plays into cryptocurrency's hands in terms of everything that people have been saying about crypto for years. So there was a bit of sell-off in the beginning, but when everybody panic sells globally, it's more about what people can sell instead of what they should sell. So after the initial panic settled, Bitcoin recovered a fair bit, and in the first quarter, it actually performed better than US equities. So, in terms of being a safe haven asset, I say that's a pretty good first step at developing a reputation. Obviously, it hasn't got 100, couple thousand year track record like gold, but
yeah,
it's getting there.
it can
It hasn't
happen.
collapsed. It has definitely not collapsed like a lot of the gold bugs like Peter Schiff have been talking about for a long time. He's really been hoping for
Yep,
it to go to zero. So we can
you
rest
got it.
easy in the fact that that's not going to happen. I only see upside for Bitcoin in terms of the long run, in terms of it being a kind of deflationary asset, or people not being able to have control over their supply, being able to print more just when they feel the economy needs a boost. And I think since that's mathematically guaranteed, people can rely on it. And we've seen global adoption now. So, I mean, in terms of if I look at the volumes on local Bitcoins, for example, all throughout South America, the volumes are much higher than the 2017 peak, even in terms of price and
Yep,
trading on that platform. So, a lot of people are trading peer to peer. A lot of people are using it for remittance, of people sending money back home. For
yep.
example, if you don't have an ID card somewhere, you move to a different country, you're working there. Some of the only ways you can send money back home is by using cryptocurrency. So that's definitely something promising.
Yeah, that's an interesting use of cryptocurrency in general, and Bitcoin is becoming more and more powerful in that matter by helping people to send like all these because if you see now, for example, we talk about MoneyGram or some of those that work for sending remittance, you're gonna see that the cost of that, the difficulty of that can sometimes be really uh,
Yeah,
high, and
they charge like
we,
10%.
yes, insane. And you have to find a place to reclaim your money. And if sometimes in this little village they don't have it, so they have to travel right far away to get the money. When probably in the village they have internet and they can access really fast to their money when they
Hmm.
receive that. So that's an incredible value they have there in cryptocurrency. Um, I get to know that you guys are working in a gold fund right now. Can you talk us a little more
Yeah.
about it in Invictus Capital? Okay.
So we're launching the a gold fund that's going to be backed by the Tether and Paxos gold tokens. Essentially, what the opportunity there is that there's the ability to margin lend on platforms like Bitfinex, especially, for example, the Tether gold token. So you can actually earn a yield, you can earn interest on owning gold now, which is a really interesting thing. And that doesn't actually exist in the traditional market. But because, the crypto market has opened up the opportunity to do peer-to-peer, script lending, um, when that traditionally is only available to institutions. Now, individuals have the ability to do that too. So by investing in a fund like this, you can get access to actually earning interest on your gold, which is a pretty amazing opportunity. So we look to outperform, actually the gold ETFs. After fees,
Okay.
we would have additional return of either using arbitrage because people, I'm not sure if you've seen, but some of these tokens trade sometimes even 3% above the mint price, above spot on exchange, and that's because it costs the minimum to purchase these tokens directly, 250,000 or $100,000 depending on which of the providers you're using. So it's not something that individuals can do. So you can actually get a significant discount if you enter through a vehicle like a fund, which has a collective pool of money, say $250,000 or more. You can actually get a better deal for yourself by entering in using a fund, buying gold using a fund. So this will be a tokenized fund. It'll be pretty easy to purchase. You can use Bitcoin, Ethereum, other stable coins. and you can redeem in the same way. So it's all available on our platform at invictuscapital.com. So that's something to take a look at.
Very interesting, Daniel. We are getting a little short of time right now, but I have a fast question right now. Is this fund, we can probably put it in the DeFi, right? We can say that it's the decentralized financial institutions, like, for example, this new bank that is coming up, and they are doing like interest on some cryptocurrencies. We are seeing more and more of these, but you guys are working in gold right now with some kind of like fund that we're going to invest and try to outperform, of course, the ETFs by using a blockchain.
So I mean, we're a centralized, we're not DeFi, so it's not just using smart contracts. We're obviously a centralized company and asset manager, but there are a lot of benefits to that. For now, I don't totally trust a lot of the DeFi products yet, because we've seen a lot of interesting cases, like, for example, the flash crash, where people were using flash loans to tank the price of ETH. The guy made a few $100,000 in a couple of minutes, and then they had to, reverse the trades. And so I wouldn't say all the kinks are worked out quite yet. So it's still quite exploitable. I'd give it some more time before heavily investing in kind of DeFi protocols. It's still too new. It's particularly if you're, these DeFi protocols have millions of dollars in them. It's like a big honeypot. You're inviting all the hackers of the planet to come take a shot at this. It's not, I'd give it some time before, putting my life savings into it. I'd prefer to use something that's a little bit more secure for now. Like a hardware wallet that's, offline. It's not hackable, but online, cold wallets. But if you're using a hot wallet that's connected to the internet, it's a different story.
You are a risk for sure. Thank you very much, Daniel.
Hello.
I'm gonna ask. Jose.
Hey, hello, Daniels. We have a question. Tenemos una pregunta desde el chat de YouTube, y que es si piensan que Quant Fury o otros sitios de intercambio similares van a ser la siguiente generación de bancos. Do you think companies like Quant Fury or other exchanges will be the next generation of banks?
I think exchanges definitely have the ability to operate as banks. A lot of them do. For example, you're looking at a company like Binance. They hold customer deposits. They offer interest on those deposits. People can trade and send to other people. It's essentially a bank account. You need a KYC for it. It's almost the same thing. So I think a lot of people, especially the younger generation of people, are going to move to, particularly with this coronavirus crisis now, a lot of shops, for example, in the US are banning the use of cash. So you can only pay with a credit card. You can only pay digitally. I think we're going to see cash being phased out, and people will start to use digital currencies or cryptocurrencies much more. Binance account is just as good as a bank account once people start, accepting it in more places.